Hello and welcome everyone to the latest edition of FI Live. It is your host, Susan Choi, FI Digital Media Director, and I'm so excited that you guys are here today. We're going to have a great show. As always, don't we always give you a great show? Because we're the Food Institute. We are the premier source for all your food and beverage industry news needs. We are at www.foodinstitute.com, and we are on every social media platform you can think of, except for TikTok. We're working on that. We are an organization made up of wonderful written content, podcasts, webinars, videos, you name it, we've got it. www.foodinstitute.com. Don't forget to check us out for anything that you need for your food and beverage industry news needs. We have a lot of great events coming up. One event in particular that I want to promote is in January. It is a special webinar, a collaboration between OFW and the Food Institute. It is on January 10th through 12th. It's a 3-day virtual seminar, and it's all about the special legal and regulatory issues, the top issues facing the food and beverage companies, food and beverage industry, top issues that they will be facing, regulatory issues in 2023. You don't want to miss it. They're going to be talking about carbon labeling best practices, front of pack nutrition claims, class action lawsuits, all the things that you want to keep in the forefront of your mind if you are a food and beverage product company. So don't miss that. Check us out in the coming days and weeks for more information, www.foodinstitute.com. All right, now to the main event. I am so excited to have this special guest with us. She is the founder of Haven's Kitchen, a line of wonderful ready-made sauces. She has been a restaurateur. She's been a venue owner, a special event venue owner. She is the host of her own podcast, In the Sauce, which I am a big fan of. She also has run her own cooking school. She is a champion of at-home cooking and culinary arts. She is a maven in the food industry, and I'm so happy to have her here today. She is Alison Cayne of Haven's Kitchens, and I'm so happy to have you here with us today, Alison. Thank you so much. You're a friend of the Food Institute.
Thanks, Susan. I like the word maven because it rhymes with haven. So I'm like the Haven's maven.
Maybe I should write a little poem or something and then.
I mean, if you want to write a poem, it's been a rough couple of weeks. I could use a poem. I would very much appreciate a poem.
All right. So maybe Brittany, since I'm doing the on-camera work right now, maybe my producer Brittany can think of a poem before the end of the show.
Okay, perfect. Love it.
Yeah, Alison, thanks so much for having for being here with us, to grace us with your presence. Can't wait to talk to you all about flavors, tastes, what's going on with that in the food industry. What do people want, right? When it comes to, what they want things to taste like. But before we get into that, I thought we shake things up a bit. Have a little FI Live quiz. Brittany, you want to bring up that lovely little graphic that I worked so hard on. Thank you. Thank you, Google Slides.
So we're starting off with a quiz.
Okay. Starting off with a quiz. You're not being graded. This won't go on your permanent record. School is over. Okay. It's going to be okay. Unfortunately, school is not over for my 8-year-old son. He's always asking me, Mom, when is school over? Like forever.
Never.
All right, kid. Only in 2nd grade. He's got a couple more good number of years left. I can't even do the math, but fortunately, math is not on this quiz. We're going to ask you just a few questions regarding flavor, taste buds, and we're going to see what any of us know about taste buds, about flavor. So, Brittany, bring up the first question. Question number 1: what are the 5 basic tastes? Alison, can you school us on that?
Yes, I would say I think they're sweet, salty, bitter, sour, and umami.
All right, let's see. There you go. Ding, ding, ding. Excellent.
Oh,
A+.
Amazing. Good for me.
Umami, of course, the 5th taste to describe savory. It's a Japanese word for savory, I think, and used to describe, that savory flavor. Mushrooms, right? Soy sauce. Mm-hmm. What's another type of food, Alison, that we can find that umami?
I mean, MSG, right?
MSG, thank you. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I think they talk about sort of like anything like a cured meat or, something that makes your mouth water a little bit.
Right. Right. I mean, whose mouth wouldn't water at taste of cured meats? I mean,
Mhm.
minus the whole plant-based industry. Sorry.
But cured
I messed that
jerky,
up.
mushroom jerky. Yeah.
There you go. Yes. And we had Pan's mushroom jerky. We had on Michael Pan previously. Great
Mhm.
guy. Great product. Pan's jerky, delicious, very meaty. Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next question. Brittany, let's put that up.
Yeah.
How many taste buds are on the
Mm.
human tongue? I can
I
give you a
think
choice.
it's
I can give
some.
you, yeah,
Okay.
I can give you,
Okay.
it's either 1,000, it's either 5,000, or it's 10,000.
I think it's 5.
Okay. It's
Oh,
about 10,000.
wow.
But you know what,
That's a
Allison,
lot.
you are right in a way, because I did read that the human tongue, as it gets older, we do degenerate as
Loses.
we get older into
So as
about
a
like
50-year-old
5,000.
woman, I have half of that. I was talking about my tongue, Susan. My tongue has
I
fewer
got it.
taste
I got
buds
it.
now because I'm
I got it.
older. Yeah. Okay.
I
So I
should have
got
been
like
more
a B
specific.
on
So
that.
you do.
It's
You,
fine.
I'll give it to you by default. I'll give it to you by default.
Thank you.
Yes, we do have about 10,000 taste buds, and they regenerate every 2 weeks, if you can believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
our taste buds are covered with tiny hairs called microvilli, and those are the little things in our tongue that send the message to our brain, whether it's like sweet, salty, bitter. Very interesting. That was an interesting little factoid. Okay, it's almost over. We have one last question. I thought this was very interesting. Which spice was found in cave dwellings thousands of years ago as evidence of
Sesame.
seasoning meat?
Oh.
Sesame,
So,
star
well,
anise,
hold
or
on.
garlic
Yeah.
mustard? Mm-hmm.
So I know that the sesame seed has been like around for ever and ever and ever, and that ancient civilizations knew about it, open sesame, sesame oil. But the seasoning meat thing is throwing me off. So I'm going to go with star anise.
Okay, final answer. It
Garlic
is actually
mustard.
garlic mustard. Garlic
Really?
mustard, a bitter taste. The researchers in the Department of Archaeology at the University of York, they found in caves, where was it? In Denmark and Germany, pottery shards. They saw ancient
Of like
remnants dating
mustard
back
seed.
7,000 years of mustard seed, along with remnants of fish and fish and poultry, deer meat. They took it back to the lab.
Wow.
They determined that there was no real nutritional value for garlic mustard, therefore
Yeah.
deducing that they must have been using it as a seasoning. And it's got a bitter taste. You have to cook it down, and you can use it in soup, stews, stir fries. Yeah.
Amazing. Wow.
So
Yum.
there you go.
Cool.
Just showing how relevant seasoning, flavoring has always been. And you, Allison,
Mhm.
know better than anyone else. As the owner of Haven's Kitchen, the line of sauces. I want to kick things off. Let's get into it. Finally, let's get rid of the quiz. You did great on that. And we'll get into the sauces. I want you to tell me all of it. Tell the world, tell the audience all about Haven's Kitchen. What is it?
Well, Haven's Kitchen now is a company that makes products that help home cooks feel like champions. And that means that right now we have a line of fresh sauces, like you said, but there's going to be a lot more. And our mission is to give home cooks easy, bold, global flavors that are healthy and that get them from zero to hero really quickly. So that started to, like what you said before, with the first line of fresh sauce with really delicious flavors like chimichurri and red pepper romesco and a golden tahini. And we're going to be expanding the line into a couple of other categories over the next couple of years. But home cooks generally have a problem. And even if they're cooking a lot more, they have a hard time getting that flavor that we always talk about. The difference between a home cooked meal and oftentimes a restaurant meal is just that like flavor that lingers, that reminds them of something, that's like special in a way. And they want to have it in a healthy way, and they want to have it in a fast and convenient way. And so that's our goal. Thank you. Yeah,
And
the tahini's a winner.
aha, okay, there you go. So now we know the favorite, the tahini.
It's in the top 3. That it's not
Okay.
but it's growing, and it's very popular, especially on the West Coast. because it's this
Oh,
golden
interesting.
sunshine color. It has turmeric in it, so
Okay.
it's like really bright
Mhm.
and beautiful, and it's very Instagrammable. And it also tastes fantastic, especially this season with like roasted squash and roasted carrots, and it's tahini season for me.
I remember like one of my favorite, cook, celebrity chef, Nigella Lawson, like she always used
Hmm.
turmeric in all of her food. And she was like, this is less a
Hmm.
seasoning. It's just more of a gorgeous food dye, really. And she would just
Yeah, I
pile
mean,
it in
it's
there
also
because it
like,
was like a,
yeah, super functional also, as a lot
Mhm.
of spices are. Ginger, lemongrass, all of these things they are very flavorful, but they also have been linked to a lot of, functional benefits for thousands of years.
Oh, there we go. We have a comment. The tahini is a crowd favorite with my friends. So there you
Yeah.
go. Proof right there. The tahini hits notes with people. One thing I
Yes.
wanted to ask you along those lines is, you mentioned something which I found really significant. You're providing flavors for people who want them. And they want to spice up, their meals. And
Mhm.
remind me, when did Haven's Kitchen start? When did the sauces start? The line of sauces.
So, I mean, the line of sauces, we launched the sauces in 2018, but like you said in the introduction, I owned a cooking school that I opened in 2012. I actually, before that, got a master's degree in food studies and food systems. So I've been studying not only flavor, but just like the history. This is why I feel bad that I didn't get the garlic mustard thing. Like, this is actually, I have a degree in food systems and food studies and food policy. It's kind of everything. Why people eat what they eat, and how. And then really wanted to teach people how to cook, opened a cooking school in New York, wrote a cookbook. And then basically a lot of our students were saying, I'm thank you for teaching me how to make these sauces, but I don't know, I don't really want to cook, take the time to make, three different kinds of roasted peppers to make a romesco sauce, or I don't have a good enough like control of the knife to mince oregano and garlic to make a really good chimichurri, or, lemongrass is very intimidating to me. Can you just package these things? And, we looked around and there really wasn't anything like them on the market in the grocery store for a number of reasons. Um, we wanted to create a product that we could be proud of. Again, my degree partially is in like sustainability. So I didn't want to add another packaged good to the world unless it was really doing something good for the consumer. And launched in 14 Whole Foods in New York in 2018. And now we're in about 2,000 stores across the country, helping people cook dinner, making it healthy, easy, delicious every night of the week.
That's amazing, especially because, you started in 2018, just 2 years before the pandemic, which totally
Yeah.
changed the landscape of, the
Yep.
consumer, right? And, through the research that the Food Institute has done, all the coverage they've done about the pandemic and all the trends that,
Hmm.
we've been covering, and seeing that everlasting, trend of, people cooking from home.
Hmm.
But one thing that we've heard from experts is, that you seem to be hitting the mark on with your line of sauces. It's like people, are cooking at home, but they're not, still don't have the know-how. They're just doing it because they have to now, right? Because of the, whether they
Yep.
don't feel comfortable eating at a restaurant or what have you, right? Like their lifestyle has changed because they're working from home now. They're not out already anymore, right? So many COVID has changed so
Hmm.
many things for people in their homes and their lives. And so, but if you don't have people, really invested in cooking, but they are still cooking because they have to, then it's like they're
Hmm.
left with they need flavor, they need sauce. And so it seems like you really anticipated that, through your creation of sauces. If you could kind of like expand more
Yeah.
about that, like how were you able to do that, more in depth? Like what, like kind of trying to put your finger on the pulse, like what is it that people want, like out of their sauces and their
Yeah.
flavors they want to taste these days?
I mean, I've been teaching cooking for 25 years. So this was just, me knowing what drove my students crazy, which is essentially if you take an average American home cook, and obviously that has changed since the pandemic, there are more of them. But if you take that person they have a rotation. Everyone's got a rotation. They got chicken, maybe they have salmon, they might have a pasta night, they maybe do takeout one night, but there's not that many things that the average home cook has the time or the energy, or the resources, whatever they may be, to make. So how do you take chicken, or salmon, or even cauliflower, and make it interesting? Forget about, however many nights a year a lot of people cook, but now double that, right? You have 80% of Americans cooking more than they did in 2019. The majority of those people say they're going to continue to do that. And you also have more people working from home, so they're going to be making lunch in addition to dinner, right? So what people need is like a shortcut that is not the normal ranch dressing or marinara, because again, it's the same old. So how do you get people really interesting flavors that are approachable for them, so they don't feel like they have to make a commitment, right? It's scary. I don't know if my family likes curry. I don't know if my family likes, this type of cuisine. So what we've done is we've said, okay, this is, we're never claiming to be an authority on any of these different regional cuisines. But if you're curious about what macroot lime might taste like in your food, it's like used in a lot of Southeast Asian cooking. You will find it, you might even recognize, oh, this is that thing that I had that time at that restaurant. There's something here, right? But you're not necessarily willing to go out and find macroot lime leaves and figure out what to do with them. So we're kind of like a little bit of a gateway, right? Piquillo peppers, lemongrass, different types of peppers and chilies and root vegetables, all of these things are little gateways for people to see, do I like this type of food? Am I going to go further? Am I going to start making this part of my, weekly routine, essentially? And that's not a new concept. That's been sort of the state of the American home cook for a long time. What has changed is who's doing the cooking. What's changed is social media. What's changed is those people, globalization, traveling the world, different restaurants that they've experienced that are serving these types of food, the investment into bringing new and, diverse flavors into the American palate. All of that has changed over the past decade, really. Starting with, I have this sort of cross between Michael Pollan, Instagram, and Ottolenghi is how I think about it. People started getting into cooking. They started seeing a lot more food on their, digital feeds. And Ottolenghi, I think, really brought flavor into the American culinary lexicon in a way that I don't think someone has in decades.
That's fascinating. Tell me I want to know what was the innovation process like? Like a great concept, these ready-made sauces, filling a need, right? In that consumer space in the kitchen. What was that like, sitting down with your team and being like, all right, what kind of flavor should we have? Where should we start? Tell me what that
Yeah.
process was like.
Well, for the first product, I really wanted it to be as close to what you would make in your home kitchen as possible. So for me, that first product needed to be fresh. It just needed to feel like it's exactly what I would make if I had the time to mince these things or roast these things or whip together the tahini and the turmeric. But I don't have to. It's in a pouch and it's squeezy and easy and beautiful, and the colors shine through. And it's almost as if I made this from home. And, I would like to say it was more complicated than we took our students' 3 favorite sauces, but that's what it was. The first 3 were the chimichurri that you see now, the red pepper romesco, and we had a peanut lemongrass sauce that has since been, changed to be cashew coconut. Lemongrass is a little scary for people on a label, we've learned. And also because of, basically scalability, peanuts are just like very, very hard because of the allergens. So those were the top, the first three. They're still in rotation. Then the next year, we wanted something with like a ginger and a miso. And we sort of riffed on a sauce that I've always made at home for my kids, where it's kind of the, everything but the kitchen sink sauce. So it's, miso whipped with a bunch of, toasted sesame oil, mirin, you know, whatever, and ginger. And we also launched a harissa, which it turns out wasn't necessarily, might have been a little ahead of its time. So we pulled back on the harissa. We're going to relaunch it in another format at another time. And so, the innovation process for us has been, we're very, very connected to home cooks. We know what they like. We know what they need. We ask them a lot of questions. Obviously, we're tapped into, not trendy flavors, but flavors that more and more people are starting to understand and that are popping up more and more. We don't like to be necessarily, in a spot that's highly competitive. So that's an asset and a liability. There is no other fresh chimichurri out there. There is no other, fresh romesco. There are romescos and chimichurris, obviously, but they're in jars and they're in the center of the store, and they tend to be more in sort of specialty. So we're really sort of like, I think a little bit ahead of the flavor curve, but not so far ahead that we're too specialized. We really want this to be an approachable product for the conventional American consumer.
How is that process been like tackling that challenge of, wanting to kind of stand out from the crowd, with your product, but at the same time acknowledging that, there are things that the average consumer in America isn't ready for yet. You mentioned your experience with the harissa flavor, things like that. How can the average viewer who's watching this, the small business owner, the product developer, what do you think they should be keeping in mind when faced with that kind of obstacle? Like, how far should I go into the unique, or how entrenched should I stay in what's familiar for consumers, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't have the secret answer. It's very much, threading a very thin line, sailing a boat, keeping it, you don't want to put yourself into a place where there's so much competition and there's tons of it out there that a buyer, ends up having to be like, listen, there are 45 ranch dressings. Why would I choose yours? Right. So you want to have something that's like a little bit different, like you said, but you also don't want to be so esoteric that the consumer has no idea. And we've been on either side of that. What I think we hit with the chimichurri is probably about, somewhere around 50 to 60% of American consumers know what chimichurri is. To give context, about 30% of American consumers know what tahini is. So first of all, I'm a New Yorker and I've been teaching cooking in New York City. I've got to get out of a little bit my, coastal brain to some extent. I also have to know that like what happens with flavors, and this has been over centuries, is there's always certain groups that adopt flavors first. And there is generally sort of what's called an extensification. It's a old food studies term. Bitter, for example, fermented, another example. These are flavors that don't start off in mainstream, that start off in a particular group, usually what is referred to as the elite, which is, people with higher education, people with more exposure to globalization, et cetera, people with more sort of travel, right? And then it extensifies into the mainstream. So, when you hit that 60%, chimichurri was an unusual thing in 2018. Now you see it on menus across the country. You see it kind of more chimichurri seasonings, et cetera. So you want to be like a little bit ahead of the curve, but you don't want to be so far ahead that people have no idea what the hell you're doing or, you're making. And then, the other challenge on the flip side, so you have sort of the consumer and the grocery store buyer challenges, and those are real. And, these things require, you know, a lot of consumer education and some buyer education and patience with grocery stores. But you also have supply chain issues, right? So the more esoteric your ingredient, A, the harder it is to find. B, the, less stable perhaps the supply chain is. And, C, one thing that you want to be as a food producer is if you're buying raw materials, you want to be on contract. You don't want to be spot buying because that's where you really start to see significant price increases. So you want to have enough volume and you want to be using enough of this particular ingredient to sort of de-risk it by being on contract and also get, a little bit better margin. So there's a lot of little things to pay attention to. But, I'm happy with the fact that we were in the Chobani incubator in 2018 and their head of innovation kind of sat me down and he was like, do you know what my job is? And I said, yeah, you're head of innovation. And he's like, yeah, I'm telling you to stop innovating. Like you gotta make a blueberry. You gotta make a vanilla. Like you gotta, just rein it in a little bit, and I think with our edamame green goddess, we did that. We have a green goddess, which is, something people know and they've heard of and they can latch a meaning onto and they know what to do with it. But we put our spin on it. We brought in, some different flavors and we used edamame as a base instead of, anything dairy. So that's doing really, really well in the market because I think it kind of threads that needle quite well.
One of the things that we're doing at FI is we're really looking into the trend with hot sauce. It's just exploding. Like two major hot sauces have been bought out for like billions of dollars, and the growth in the hot sauce market it's in the past 3 years alone grown by like something like 24%. And then when we talk to experts, they are saying that you do see an increase of people who want complexity. They do want to break out of the mold, and you see the industry responding to that. Like it's like in his words, it was like he was saying the industry is like they're giving the consumers like the benefit of the doubt in thinking like, oh, let's put out like a little more like, a little less like mainstream flavor and like putting more faith that the consumer will like that, right? And like they don't want to just go with what's familiar. They want to try new things. What's your experience been these days, this past year, 2 years? Have you noticed kind of like that same trend, like your customer base, consumers in general, as you're working on your sauces? Have you noticed the same thing? And if so, like what's that looked like? People they are starting to kind of want to open their minds maybe to complex flavors.
Again, I think this was happening before the pandemic. It just sped it up like everything else. I think 2012 is a really pivotal year. And it's not just because it's when I opened the cooking school, but it's the year that Instagram launched, right? And all of a sudden you had, when I was growing up, my mother's entire like mission was, not cooking, right? She had spent her 20s markedly deciding that she was not going to be in the kitchen anymore. My generation, Gen X, like we had free reign. We had a lot of fun making random stuff and playing around with food. And then, the millennial generation, like they love cooking. They see it as projecty. They see it as self-care. They see it, and then you add onto that Instagram where, whoever shared pictures of everything they ate and everything they made and squeezing something on and ripping something off. And and then you add globalization and travel and changing demographics of the American population. There's just all of these, social, economic, cultural shifts that are happening. And it makes sense that people want complexity and that they want heat and they want funk and they want bitter. These are flavors that have existed forever. It's just that the American consumer hasn't been exposed to them until really the last decade. And they were always sort of put over here, and they weren't represented in terms of investment dollars. And all of those things have shifted over the last decade. Then you add in a global pandemic where you have 80% of Americans, and I would imagine it's even more, cooking now, not once a week, every meal. And they're like, I've eaten salmon or turkey burgers or pasta, whatever it is, just an inordinate amount of times. What can I do to make this feel a little bit more special? How can I give myself a little hit of, some sort of dopamine that either takes me back to a place I visited, makes me feel like I'm doing something like fun and different and out of the ordinary because I've been locked in my house for 2 years. All of those things, and you put them all in a pot and you come out with, yeah, Americans are craving complexity and heat and bitter. And then you add, they also know that these things are good for them. It's not news to, nutritionists and people in this industry that spices have incredible healing powers, that, root vegetables and seasoning, that's really, really good for you. And so, that's a whole other piece of it. How do I protect my health? Wow, it turns out that turmeric and red pepper, or that eating more probiotics or adding ginger, all of these things are not only like adding flavor and delicious, but they're also making me healthier. It makes so much sense.
Yeah, I've been noticing through my research as well. You hit another point, like medicine. Food is medicine.
Hmm.
Really, really trying to draw like health benefits directly from the food rather than, going to a
Right.
product like a supplement alone. It's like actually,
Right.
recipes and yeah.
Which I mean, these are not new things. These are thousands and
Yeah.
thousands year old concepts, right? I
Mhm.
mean, there's just now an exposure to them, and now people are starting to tap into, wait, maybe there is some wisdom here. Maybe this sad American diet isn't doing us very well, right? Let's figure
Right.
out, you know. So I can see a question. Can you see a question
Yeah,
from
yeah, yeah,
Brian?
yeah. I
Yeah.
wanted to bring that up next from another big fan of yours, Brian Choi asked, Allison, what are the most popular sauces in Haven's Kitchen sauce lineup?
So we have an interesting, so chimichurri has always been in number one spot. Our gingery miso sauce has definitely been creeping up on it a little bit, and the turmeric tahini is in number three. We just launched this year the edamame green goddess and the coconut cashew, both of which are definitely gaining speed. We launched a barbecue, which is interesting because, when Mr. Innovation Man said, don't innovate, I was like, maybe we'll do a barbecue. Everyone knows what barbecue is. But we actually pulled the sail out too far on that SKU, and too many people have a connection to a barbecue sauce. And so that one really didn't work for us. So we're letting that one go, but we're launching a really, really fun one in March. But the top three are chimi, gingery miso, and golden tahini. The romesco is like a cult favorite, but I think people are still a little bit confused. Like, what is romesco and what do I do with it?
Interesting. It's like yeah, it's like it's really introducing people to, a whole world out there. And I actually,
Mhm.
yeah, I love what you said about, how um, you were explaining, all the factors that have brought us to where we are, in terms of, Instagram and the changing demographic of the country, technology. Brian and I, we were just watching a food blogger the other day, going to Trinidad and Tobago, and Brian and I were
Yeah,
learning like all these different foods that they do that we would never see. But you have that.
yeah,
It's like the combination of like the technology, because you've got you have handheld cameras, and it's so easy to just like put up a video now on YouTube. And then B,
Yeah.
yeah, again, like people, the different, people are wanting to be bolder, and they're wanting to explore right outside of their comfort
Yeah.
zone because of
And they
the
right.
change in
They
demographics of people. But, it's like people
right.
like
And
me, like
they wanted
immigrants, or, children of
right.
immigrants. Yeah.
And also, just, I mean, my daughter who's in college watches culinary like cooking shows for relaxation, right? That I mean, I did that when I watched like the Galloping Gourmet when I was 10, but I was very much an anomaly. That was not a thing. Food as entertainment, cooking as entertainment, chefs as celebrities. When did all this happen? And then you add on to it a pandemic where everyone's just like in their houses and, and the thing about it is, even when I wrote my cookbook, I didn't want a gorgeous, beautiful photo of a perfect meal on the front of my cookbook because that puts up a barrier, right? It's like the home cook knows that they're not getting to that. And if they want to get to that beautiful, perfectly plated thing with just the herbs, just so, and like that's going to take them many, many hours. And chances are they also know that it's going to be disappointing and that it's going to take a while to clean up. And they also know that they have to go shop for 4 hours to find the right seasoning and the right thing. So what we learned very early on is that the home cook isn't daunted just by the act of cooking. They find stress in all of the things leading up to the act of cooking and all of the things after the act of cooking. And our job, this is why we say we're a company that's on a mission to make home cooks feel like champions. There's no way to feel like a champion if you spend 4 hours cleaning and if you spend 2 hours shopping and your family looks at you like, this was okay, thanks, bye. You don't feel like a champion that way, right? And the way you do is you make salmon well cooked and you squeeze something beautiful on it and you present it and everyone goes, ooh, ah. And so that's what we do.
So it seems like, really in developing your product, you're really, which seems like a seamless transition from your cooking school because you already really focused on, the student, and now, transitioning, focusing on the consumer. It seems like, yeah, you're really trying to have your finger on the pulse of, really trying to, like, empathy seems very like huge for you and your team. Like, okay, what is it that will really not only deliver flavor to them, which is the baseline, but also really making the consumer feel like they're really involved and they're kind of like making a difference in the kitchen. That's kind of like what I'm hearing, which is very interesting.
Yeah, for
You know,
sure.
yeah, like
I think that there
speaking to.
are, yeah.
Mhm. Oh
Oh,
no, please
thank
go
you.
ahead.
Oh, no, someone I just saw.
Oh, yeah, great
Thanks, Lex.
comment from Lex Evan. Thank you, Lex.
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to, there are tons and tons and tons of products that deliver flavor, right? The problem is it's not just the flavor that the home cook is looking for. There's a lot going on around that. And what we try to do, to your point, is we try to not make it about us and our flavor, but we try to make it about you and how can we help you get to dinner and feel like a hero. And part of that journey is flavor, but part of it is knowing how to roast, and part of it is knowing how to hold a knife, and part of it is knowing how to store your herbs so that they don't go bad. And that's where we see ourselves as a home cooking company, not just a product company. So yeah.
What would you say to to viewers right now that are, they're trying to get their product off the ground? Like, from your experiences, this kind of holistic, approach that you have,
Mhm.
what would you recommend that to, to other entrepreneurs? Maybe they're struggling with, like, okay,
Yeah.
what's the best way to get my product out there, and to show like who I am and to really connect with the consumer, right? Because they seems like
Mhm.
that's really like it's evolved to that. Business has kind of, the food industry's kind of evolved to that, like really trying to connect with the consumer, not just, as you were saying, you're not just trying to push your sauce onto them, like you're really getting behind the counter with them, and you're trying to like
Right.
navigate with them. And like, what would you say
Yeah.
your advice is to, to
I
similar
mean,
people in your position?
I have sort of big picture advice, and then I have sort of tactical advice. I think big picture advice is, if you are not solving a problem, I don't know that you're going to be happy with your business. It's really, I think over the last couple of years, being a founder is almost like, going to film school in the 90s. Like, not everyone should start a company. And it's really hard to get, you can get an initial traction, but you have to be solving a problem for people, not just, oh, I want to, put this out into the world because my cookie's really good, right? So what's the problem? And how are you the solution? Why are you uniquely the right person to build this solution? And then if you have that, and you have that pretty well answered for yourself, then the number one thing that you need to do is make a product that has gross margin. You need to have a product that when you actually sell it, you make some money, because right now is a very hard time to get started in this business, right? We know that like everyone in this industry is operating on very, very thin margins. So if you're producing something with a very low gross margin, and then you have a distributor, and then you have a broker, and then you have, the grocery store, and then you have bill backs, and then you have, promos, everyone's taking a little piece away. So it's really important to think about, like, if this product that I want to make is going to cost so much to make, then it might not be the right product to be making. So going back to, okay, what's the problem? How am I the solution? And then maybe like, okay, how can I make this in a way that's actually like financially, viable? And then to your point, you have to think about, who am I talking to, right? Who's my core person? Like, we all need to have this, not consumer. We have to have fans. There are so many products out there. It is so hard to distinguish yourself. What is the thing that's really going to bring people in, and who are those people? And don't try to think too big, too fast. Just think like, how do I connect with these people? And ask them early on, what is it that you like about this? Because a lot of times we start these products thinking, okay, this is a keto product. But then it turns out that it's actually not for people that are keto, but diabetic people really love this product. And all of a sudden, your messaging becomes different, your package becomes different, the way that you spend your marketing dollars becomes different. But you wouldn't know that if you just launched it and you didn't listen. So there's operational considerations, there's sales considerations, there's marketing considerations. But at the end of the day, if you don't have something that is differentiated, that solves a problem for consumers, you're going to have a very, very uphill climb.
I love that you finished with what you started with, which really captured me. Like, yeah, what problem are you solving? What niche, right? Like, are you fulfilling? In my in my line of work, reporting and interviewing many people, seeing many, going to many shows, and talking with many exhibitors in all stages. But the story I hear more often than not is like, oh yeah, like I made this at home, or like my mom made this and everyone loved it, and everyone was always saying, you should put it out, you should sell it. And so then, they were like, and so then, yeah, we're just going to give it, we're here, we're giving it a shot. We think it's a great product. And it's like, it's a great story, right? Like, it's really sweet. And like the product, I'll taste the product, be like, oh yeah, this is pretty good. But yeah, the one thing I've learned from my short time so far in being a part of this industry is, yeah, it's really, you have to count the cost. Like, you have to really, as much as you can, before you dive in, like, what does it really mean to put your product out there? And yeah, like, I love the example you gave. Like, you think you're keto, but then you see a whole nother audience like responding that you didn't even anticipate.
I think there's also, there's I know we've deviated a little bit from the flavor discussion, but there's lots of granola, right? And lots of really delicious granola. So your point of differentiation can't be, mine's mine's delicious. Because, to use an expression that we all kind of use, delicious is table stakes at this point. Everything's delicious. You can't get a slot on a grocery store shelf if you're not delicious. So once it's delicious, then let's talk about, if in order to make money on that product, you need to be double the cost of the next most delicious granola, is the consumer going to pay double? Are you going to have enough people that are adding that to their cart? Because in our business, it's all about velocity. It's week, units per SKU, per store, per week. Are people adding it to their cart over and over and over and over again? The great news about probably people who are taking the time to listen to this discussion is that if you're in the business of flavor, you're probably in the business of sauces and seasonings and condiments and dressings. And we happen to be a very good category. It's always a good category in times of economic issues. Like, it's that lipstick index. I'm not going to go out to eat, but I'm going to spend a little bit more on this premium sauce so I can feel a little bit special tonight, right? So we're in a good category. And the other thing I love about it is there's no one winner takes all. Condiments and sauces and dressings are forever going to be targeted by strategics looking for acquisition, because like, to your point, the American palate is consuming, and we like to layer. The American palate is growing, and we like to layer our sauces with each other, and people like to put, different condiments with different things. I'm friendly with Jing from Fly by Jing, and like our gingery miso with like a dollop of her chili crunch is perfect, So people, it's not a winner take all world in our area, but I think with flavors, you don't necessarily want to do something that you're going to be talking to a buyer, at Whole Foods or Sprouts or Albertsons, and they have 5 of you, 5 vegan ranches. Why yours over someone else's? And by the way, yours is $2 more. You're just setting yourself up for, distress.
One thing that caught my ear that you mentioned, so many great nuggets from you, Alison. This is why we asked you on to be a guest. But yet another nugget that you've given us that I think is significant. You were saying, what is it that's going to make the consumer choose your product every time? Like pick your item, like volume, right? You were saying like that loyalty. Is that something that you think about? Is that at the forefront of your mind when you're developing like a new flavor or
All the
thinking of like
time.
maybe a new product that you knew? Yeah. So yeah, describe
my whole
that.
business, my whole business. I think every emerging brand's whole business for the first 5 years is a velocity story. It has to be. You're saying, okay, I've got my margins right. I've got my, my weekly sales. We're beating everyone else who's on the shelf next to us. All we need now is distribution to fuel that fire. We've proven that this works in this group, and here's how. And now all we need to do is just like go out and bang down doors, because we've gotten it right. We've figured out the glitches. And that's a margin story, and it's also a velocity story. If at the end of the day, the grocery store is a physical space with a finite amount of actual room to put products. In my set, it happens to be even smaller because it's refrigerated. So I have to, if this is my slot and I'm not generating more dollars per that slot than the guys next to me, I'm not going to keep that slot. And the way that you do that is this combination of a premium price point where, I'm bringing value enough to the consumer that they're willing to spend, $6.99 on a sauce, which isn't crazy, but, and also velocity. Are people adding this over and over and over again? That's why I think a lot of, direct to consumer brands, as they enter retail, they're a little confused because they don't know what their velocity is yet, and when they were acquiring consumers through paid ads, that's not a repeat weekly consumer. that's now adding you when they go buy their milk or their butter. That's where you need to be, at least in my category. That's not true for everyone. Olive oil you don't buy every single week, right? But that's the name of the game in grocery.
I had a question relating to that, actually. Shifting into like logistical challenges, your experiences, as
Mm-hmm.
running these line of sauces, the fact that it does need to
Mm-hmm.
be refrigerated has, like,
Mm-hmm.
how challenging that has that been, especially in light of supply chain challenges and transportation issues,
Mm-hmm.
truck driving shortage, things like that. Has that been a challenge, needing those sauces to be refrigerated? Have you ever thought of, ever like changing it up, making like a shelf stable sauce? Is that even possible? What are your thoughts on that?
So I would say a couple things. I think, and I come at this from as a mom of 5 kids, right? One thing you learn when you're a parent is that assets are the same thing as liabilities, just the other side, right? Someone is really, really kind and generous. That is an asset. It can also be a liability when they get taken advantage of. Someone's super competitive. That is an asset. And it can also be a liability when they get like aggressive. Every asset is a liability, and every liability can be an asset. So for us, refrigerated supply chain is most certainly an asset. People look to us as a fresh product. They understand that, high pressure pasteurization is a beautifully clean way to keep a sauce fresh for longer than it would be, but also not boiling it and adding preservatives or adding extra salt. And like you said, when you have, a pandemic and labor issues and, gas prices and, refrigeration, it adds complexity. Most of all, though, it also makes it harder for us to get shelf space because, like I said, most grocery stores, unless they're natural, right? Most conventional grocers, they have a lot of ambient, they have a bunch of frozen, they don't have that much refrigerated space. So the requirements on that refrigerated space to be profitable are more intense. And also there's a little less innovation, which is ironic because it is where the consumer is looking for innovation. So a lot of the more progressive conventional grocers understand that and are excited to work with a company like mine. But again, it's a little bit harder to grow that distribution. To your point about, shelf stable, the company eventually is going to have a lot of different categories, and we're going to be wherever the home cook is looking for flavor, bold, healthy, exciting, right? So of course that's going to include, not just fresh going forward.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
That seems like such a no-brainer, like, seeing Haven's, like, multiple lines of, Haven's Kitchens products, like the sky, the
Yeah.
sky's the limit. It just seems very natural
Yeah.
to me.
Well, what we didn't
Um,
want to do is like platform out too early, right? We really didn't want to. We wanted to build a brand and build consumer and customer, because they're different, trust and loyalty, and prove out that we can bring people to their stores. That, we have a brand that is driving customers to go into Whole Foods and Sprouts, et cetera, and buy our product. If we spread ourselves too thin, too fast, and went into too many categories, first of all, I would probably be under the covers right now as a human, but also it's not a sustainable way to grow. And again, my degree is in, like, food policy. So like I'm all about, you want to have diversification, but you also don't want to like take on too much too fast, because inevitably something ends up, losing quality. And we really don't want to do that. So we took a few years to really figure out this product line. Who's our consumer? What do we bring? What is the problem we're solving? How are we solving it? Why us? All of those things, margins, velocity. And now we're ready to go, build out not only the distribution on the fresh, but obviously a couple different new product lines.
those are really great points. You mentioned there's a difference between the consumer and the customer. Can you explain that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we are a wholesale business. We sell to, Albertsons, Target, Sprouts, Whole Foods. That is our customer. You know, the buyer has to see value in what we're providing. Like I said, we need to be productive. We need to be bringing in incremental consumers. We need to be adding to their average basket size. We need to be driving people to buy in their market. That is our job. That is our customer. That's who we need to keep happy. If we were a direct to consumer company, we would not have that customer. We would just be selling directly to the home cooks. But we're not. There's a person in between, right? So the customer is the person, is not the person. Well, it is the buyer, but is ultimately the retailer, and the consumer is the end customer who's buying it at the retailer. And yeah, we need to be marketing to that, to that consumer as well. And we need to be basically teeing them up. So, hey, this is going to make your life easier. This is what you do with it. This is all the things that we can offer you. So the next time that you're at that shelf and you see that pouch and you're a little bit like, that you're ready to go, right? That's our job. And we know that we need to do that. That's the difference between having a product like a chip, right, and having a product like ours. Everyone knows what to do with the chip. But again, assets and liabilities, right? The chip category is a lot harder to make a splash in, and the margins are pretty cruddy. Yeah. My head of marketing just said double marketing, which is true. You're marketing to the home, to the home cook, and you're also marketing to the person who's going to give your product a shot on the shelf. And then, then you're off to the races. Then you got to prove that you can earn that spot.
Is it hard transitioning from, marketing to the customer versus marketing to the consumer?
I think as long as again, you have to know what they're looking for, right? I tend to be very consumer facing, right? My messaging is much more, I know you're home and I know you're trying to make lunch or dinner and I know you're tired and here's what I can offer you. Once I learned what the buyer was looking for, they were looking for, what is my margin? How are you driving people to this set? What are you doing for the average basket size? Like, we can prove through a couple of different ways that when people buy Haven's Kitchen, 60% of them are also buying meat and fish, right? So how do we get that secondary placement next to the meat and fish? Not just because we want to sell more sauce, but because we want to help you, grocer, sell more meat and fish. So once I learned what they are looking for, what they need, and they're not in between me and the consumer. They are with me to the consumer. And that's a very important distinction to make as a brand. These are your partners. If you don't know what helps your partner do their job better or make their lives easier, you are not a good partner. So I don't see them at all as like gatekeepers. I see them as, who's coming into your store. You know what you need. How can I help you make your job easier and make your, set more successful? How can we bring more of our fans into your store? What do you need from us? One of our buyers recently said that, they've noticed that a lot of people, because of the economy, are eating more fish and less red meat. Immediately, we were able to give them, 10 fish recipes with our sauces. Use these wherever you need them, on social media, on signage, however. Like, that is us saying, we hear you, we understand you have a problem or that there's a challenge going on, and here's how we're going to be a helpful partner for you. Those things go a really long way.
That's great. It's like, instead of just trying to pitch your stuff to them, pushing your stuff to them, you're meeting them where they are. You're thinking of it in a different way, like different perspective.
Yeah, to go back to what Courtney said in the comments, marketing, there's push marketing and there's pull marketing. In my humble opinion, push might be short-term successful. It's not a sustainable way. If you're continually pushing and you're not getting any pull, right? And how do you create pull? Like, what is that pull? That's like, You're a good partner. You're making my life better. You're helping me solve a problem. Again, it goes back to, if I'm not helping you solve a problem, I'm going to be continually spending money against this, just to trying to reach some sales number that falls apart the minute that I stop pushing. Right? You need a little push at the beginning. Yes, you need to pitch and you need to tell them like all the things and tie it up with a shiny bow. But ideally, now they start looking to you for those solutions and to you as a partner. It's a very hard business if you look at it as a ego project. That is one thing that I can very soundly say, especially in this environment.
All right, people, you heard it from the woman who knows. It's not about you.
That's basically it. It's not about you. Yeah.
which I personally, I'm all for that. I think that works even outside the food industry.
I mean, most things are, if they work in life, they work in work, and these things are universal truths, right? So
yeah. Absolutely. All right, we got a couple final questions here. First of all, I'm sure everyone's dying to know, what are your takes? What are your predictions, I guess, on the flavor trends of 2023? What do you think is going to blow up? What do you think is going to be really hot for next year?
I mean, I definitely think that complex heat is not going anywhere. I think, the chili crisps and the chili crunches and the chili oils, those are definitely here, and there are going to be more of them, and they're going to be, hotter than ever. I do think that people are also starting to really attach a meaning of like health and wellness to a briny taste as well. So, that sort of fermented-y, briny, almost, it's why you see tinned fish kind of going up, as well as, sauerkraut and kimchi going up, because there's a funk almost, and like a salty, oceany thing going on. I think that's here to stay. I think people are, tuning more into acid. So they like lime zest. They like yuzu. They like, all of those different sort of refreshing, very healthy, acidic flavors. Spicy, healthy, and briny 2023. Yep.
Yeah, she hit all the notes. Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I'm all for brine. I'm all for fermentation. As a Korean American, I'm all about the kimchi. So, and it is good for you. Got to get those probiotics.
Yeah.
Finally, I'm gonna take a shot. Not sure if you'll give us anything, but you mentioned that new sauce maybe coming out in March. Can you give us like any hints, any teases about what can we expect from that new flavor?
Well, I will say it isn't. There isn't much of it in the fresh world. It is a very popular flavor in the shelf-stable world. Very Gen Z in terms of appeal, and what's out there is certainly not good for you. So ours is, vegan, keto, gluten-free, no added sugar, but absolutely delicious. And you can literally put it on anything. And it's really yummy.
Thanks for the sneak peek. This is exciting. You heard it here at FI Live. What's coming in March 2023 from Haven's Kitchen. Gen Z friendly, keto, gluten-free. Did you say it could be like it's more with the shelf stable? It's more along the lines of shelf stable. Is that what you said?
It's fresh. No, it's in our fresh
it's still
lineup,
fresh.
but there is a version of it that people know that is shelf stable by another, by a few other brands.
Okay. That's really exciting. Thanks, Allison.
An
exclusive sneak peek into the product.
Yeah,
All right, Alison
on Whole
Cayne.
Food shelves.
Oh, awesome. Okay,
Sorry.
so it'll hit Whole Foods shelves first.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. March 2023. Don't miss that brand new flavor
Yeah.
from Haven's Kitchen Sauces. Alison Cayne, founder of Haven's Kitchen. Thank you so much. You dropped so many truth bombs in this hour. I can't wait to go and rewatch it. Maybe we'll cut it up, repurpose it for the platforms. I don't want anyone to miss all the wisdom that you gave out. Thanks again for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and it was really fun.
Yeah, thanks again. Alison Cayne, we thank you so much. FI Live, please check us out for our next episode, Date and Time TBD. As always, foodinstitute.com, your premier source for food and beverage industry inside news. You can find us on all the social media platforms as well as online, www.foodinstitute.com. I'm Susan Choi, FI Digital Media Director, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for joining us.